بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم الحمد لله رب العالمین و صلی الله علی محمد و اهل بیت الطیبین الطاهرین اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد و عجل فرجهم. We take refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Hello to you all, dear viewers and dear students and dear researchers. The topic that we were following was mainly focused on the issue of the communications and propagation. Before talking about the techniques of propagation for a good propagation and also techniques of good communication and the skills needed for better communication and academic communication, we have to have some introductory remarks to that. If you remember, we mentioned the point that in the process of communication involves several and diverse elements: the sender, the channel, and the receiver, and the feedback. Of course, there are some also noises or some barriers inside this process that stops the communication to be at its best form and at its best process and circulation. So this is the very important point, that the communication is a process and also it is very systematic. You have input, process, and output, and the output is in a direct contact with the input. Each of these actually elements and each of these parts of the process of communication needs to be skilled and to be mastered. I mean that if you are a good sender or if you are a good receiver, it affects the process of communication. If you send the message through a channel to the receiver at its best form and in a situation that it is suitable with the audience and you are master in the studies of the audience, so the process of communication is more successful. In the science of the communications, it is mentioned that we have M and M prime. M is the meaning which is inside the mind of the sender, and M prime is the meaning inside the mind of the receiver. If this M and M prime is equal with 1, so it means the process is successful. But if it is not, it means that there are some obstacles, some barriers, or some noises during the communication process. For example, there are some cultural diversities. If, according to my cultural opinion, in my cultural norms and values or beliefs, I send a message to a person who is not in common sense with me. For example, we don't have common experience, we don't have common meaning, okay? We don't have common culture. So he cannot understand me, I cannot understand him or her. So this process of communication will be corrupted because the M, the meaning of the meaning which is in my mind, is not equal with the meaning which is in the mind of the receiver or my audience. So there will be a barrier between this communication. It will not be successful. So it's very important that the person who is studying and surveying over the elements of communication to be mastered on the elements, to be mastered and to know and learn the skills needed to the issue of the actually communication. And in the issue of the classification of the communication, there are actually several types for communication: verbal communication and non-verbal communication. In the verbal communication, the encoding of message into words and either written or spoken word will happen. I mean that, for example, if you want to send a communicational word, or if you want to send a message in the form of the words or in the form of the written or a spoken form, it will be verbal. But if you send it as a facial expression, if you send it as the body language, for example, by your looks, by your by the shape of your face, okay, by your hands, by body language. It will be non-verbal communication. And each of these types and each of these ones are very important, and you have to be known in which type of communication you are dealing with. It is also very important to know that the communication is vulnerable. I mean that if you use just verbal communication and don't use the non-verbal communication, for example, facial expression, you are just a frozen speaker or frozen lecturer. Your audience will be tired very soon, and it will not be a successful process of communication. So one of the types of communication is verbal and non-verbal communication. Before going to the other types of communication, I have to mention that one of the points which is very important is the issue of the perception. I mean that the process through which the people select or organize and interpret sensory input to give meaning and order to the world around them. If you want to communicate with the audience, if in the process of communication, perception is very important. To be aware, first of all, to be aware of the perception of the audience, of the attitude of the audience, what kind of ideology the audience have, and also your perception, your ideology, and your lifestyle, and for example, the meaning that you give to this world in your mind and your attitude. So perception is one of the key terms in the process of communication. And also there are some biases or for example some stereotypes that the person, the communicator must be aware of. Okay, so perception, biases, stereotypes are three key elements that we have to be known with. You know, there are some differences between the stereotypes and the cliches, or also between the biases or the prejudices, and also to the perception and the attitudes that the researchers are referred to have a research and also a survey over these meanings, these techniques, and these terms and these words, because each of them needs separate fields of study, but the you know, it is much more related to the issue of the psychology. I mean, knowing about the perception, about the audience perception, and etc. We were talking about the types of communication. The first type of communication was the verbal and non-verbal communication. The other type, or the other classification of the communication can be of the three subcategories. First one is the downward communication, upwards communication, and lateral or horizontal communication. The downward communication is very highly directive, and it is almost and most possibly from a senior to a subordinate, and it is mostly dealt with to assign duties or to give some instructions or to show your approval or rejection, and etc. So in the downward communication, which is from so hierarchical, from the senior to the subordinate, is the first type of one of the types of the communication. The other one was the upwards communication, which is in contrast with the first one. This is not directive. This is not, as a matter of fact, at the form of ordering and etc. It must be at the form of asking for approval. It is not from senior, it is from subordinate to the senior, and it is for seeking the approvals and also to show the progress. And in the hierarchy, it is a communication from the bottom to the, as a matter of fact, to the senior. And in the lateral or horizontal communication, we have the other form of communication, which is among the colleagues, and it is not actually from up to down or from the bottom to the up. It is mostly from actually the students, or for example at the colleagues who are at the same level. So it is among the colleagues and or the peers at the same level, and it is according to the communication skills, it is much more effective and influential, because for example, if the students of the, for example, class are communicating with one another, they're at the same level. So this type of communication is horizontal communication, or it is the lateral communication. So up to here we mentioned the two types of communication, the verbal and non-verbal communication, and also the downwards communication, upwards communication, and the lateral or horizontal communication. The example of hierarchy level of communication is, for example, the executive director talks to the vice president talks to the manager talks to the supervisor, and the supervisor to the foreman, or to the ordinary staff of the offices and the bureaus. So this is downward communication. Inshallah, in upcoming sessions we will talk about some other types of communication, or some other classifications and other classes of communication. Here there is one very important point that it is included in the topic that we are talking, and that is about the information richness. In the science of the communications, or the studies about the communication, there is one important topic which is about information richness. What does it mean, information richness? The amount of the information that the communicational media can carry is the information richness. Or in another meaning, the extent to which the medium enables the sender and the receiver to reach a common understanding. The extent to which the medium enables the sender or receiver to reach a common understanding. I have to elaborate more the issue of the information richness. You know, when you use one medium, okay, which is not that much common among the common lay people, or for example among the student, or among any group, okay, you use a medium which is not appropriate, okay, so the information that you are going to send through that channel or through that medium, okay, will be in problem. So the information, the amount of the information that you send through that, actually through that medium or through that channel, will be insufficient. That is called information richness. If we try to enrich this amount of information more and more, okay, this will be more effective, and this will be more powerful in the process of communication. For example, the information richness in F2F communication. What does it mean, F2F? Face-to-face communication. The information richness in F2F communication is in its highest information richness. I mean face-to-face communication, talking in person to the addressee or to the audience, face-to-face, it is the best form of the communication. I mean, you get the instant feedback from your addressee, from your audience. But for example, in impersonal written communication, I don't know, for example, in the form of newspaper, magazine, or some books, okay, since there is not a certain addressee or the certain receiver, okay, and the feedback is not instant. So the information richness here is not at the level of the F2F communication. Please don't confuse the two issues here. I don't talk about the content of the message or the communication. Maybe the message which is in a book or in a newspaper or in a magazine is very much more valuable than a face-to-face communication, the information or the message which is fetched or, for example, transferred via F2F communication. I'm talking through the channel itself. I want to say that if you convey and send a message and transfer a message via F2F communication, this is the best form that you can send your message. But at the form of books, newspapers, and etc., it is at the lowest point. There are 4 levels, or the information richness of communication medias. There are 4 forms. First one is face-to-face communication that I talked about, and I will elaborate more. The second one is the spoken communication electronically transmitted. Spoken communication electronically transmitted. For example, the telephone, when you call someone via telephone or via using some online facilities, okay? When you talk to someone, when you speak to someone, when you chat, for example, I don't know, video chat or audio chat, no matter. At the both sides, it is a kind of communication, and it's a spoken communication with a certain address, but this is not face-to-face. Okay, this is different from the first type. The first type was communication in person. For example, you go to the address's country, to the address's home, to the address's school or I don't know, office, and talk to him or her, for example. This is the best form that you send the message. But in chatting, for example, in sending the voice, I don't know, in I don't know, Skyping, or I don't know, Vibering, or any form of the communication, which is the spoken communication, are electronically transmitted to the audience. Information richness comes lower than the first one, which was the face-to-face and in-person communication. And lower than this part is the personally addressed written communication, like email, okay, like sending SMS, okay, like sending multimedia messages. This is the third type of communication, which the information richness is in its lowest form compared to the first one. I mean, to the face-to-face or spoken communication electronically transmitted are higher than the personally addressed written communication. And the last one, which is lowest from all these 3 is the impersonal written communication that I gave the example, like the books and the magazine. Here there is a crucial point and a very vital point and note, and that is this issue that in face-to-face communication or spoken communication electronically transmitted or personally addressed written communication, in these 3 types, which is better than the 4th type, there is the addressee. You have a certain receiver, you have a certain audience, and you get sooner or later the feedback. Okay, for example, when you chat with someone, okay, you get the feedback. For example, he sends you some smileys, some stickers, and etc., and shows his feedback to your sentence, to your lecture. Or for example, when you are using a webinar, web-based seminar, you are holding some online conferences. When the professor lectures, the professor gets the instant feedback from the audience whom he or she is talking to. So at the first three types, I mean the face-to-face, the spoken communication, electronically transmitted, or the personally addressed written communication, since these three has the certain addressee and the certain receiver, and it has feedback in the process, the information richness is good in these types. But at the fourth type, which was impersonal and there is no addressee, and it is at the form of written communication, and mostly there is no feedback. For example, when you read newspaper, do you send a feedback? It is like a bullseye communication. You know, communications is sometimes like a ping-pong game. You send a message, he sends you another message as a receiver or as a feedback, okay? But sometimes communication is like a bullseye communication. In the science of communication, bullseye communication is just one-way communication. It is unilateral, not bilateral. The best form of communication is the form which is bilateral, reciprocal, and has instant feedback. So this was another point which was important to say about the information richness. There is one other type of communication which I wanted to add to the former two types, which was about verbal and non-verbal, and also the hierarchical communication, which is about the networks in communication, that inshallah in the upcoming sessions I will point out to this issue and to this subject, inshallah. So I'm waiting for any comments, for any feedback from this session, and if you have any inquiries, if you have any points or comments, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.